Hi everyone, this is the Vivo V25 Pro. So this is of course the Vivo V25 Pro. Let's quickly talk about the specifications and also some impressions that I have with the device so far. Of course, this is not a full review, stay tuned for that and subscribe and all that. But for now, these are my first impressions and what I think about it so far, including a pretty cool feature. So the Vivo V25 Pro comes with a 6.56 inch AMOLED display, 120Hz and of course a curved display on both sides. When it comes to the resolution, it's Full HD Plus and a max brightness of an impressive 1300 nits according to what they are saying. When it comes to the memory, it's either 128GB or 256GB, and in terms of RAM, it's either 8 or 12GB. My version of course has 256GB of memory and it is UFS 3.1 for both versions, 128GB or 256GB, and of course 12GB of RAM. When it comes to expanding that, sadly you cannot, but it does have dual SIMs. So if you care about that, yes, it has dual SIMs. And if we talk about battery, it's a 4830 mAh battery inside that you can charge at 66 watts. However, the brick that you get with it, yes, you get it with it, is 80 watt. So technically, if you have a device that can charge at 80 watt, this brick will actually provide that. Sadly though, this doesn't work here in the Netherlands, but I can easily have a switch for it that allows me to use it. Either way, 66 watt charging for it of course. The CPU is a Dimensity 1300. Out of my memory, I haven't used that CPU so far, so I'm not sure what the experience is with it. And also thank you for revving your engine. But when it comes to that CPU, I don't really have experience with it out of my head. But I'm curious to see how it will perform in day-to-day life, but also a bit more of course when it comes to gaming and of course camera experience. Talking about the camera, we have of course three cameras. When it comes to the camera, we have a 64 megapixel main sensor with of course optical image stabilization and a 1/172 inch sensor size, and if you are curious, it's the GW1. When it comes to the ultra wide, it's an 8 megapixel sensor with 120 degrees field of view and 108 after distortion correction. And of course we have a third sensor, which is a 2 megapixel super macro camera. Max recording is at 4K and 60 frames per second. Even though GSM Arena is telling it it's 4K and 30 frames per second, from what I've seen in my app, it actually allows me to record at 4K and 60 frames per second. The selfie camera is a 32 megapixel sensor with a 2.5 aperture and a 1/2.8 inch sensor size. Max video recording is at 1080p and 60 frames per second for now, because again in GSM Arena it's telling me 4K and 30 frames per second is max. However, that is not the case. Also, while you get a headset with the Vivo V25 Pro, there is sadly no headphone jack included with the phone. However, you do get, of course, your converter from USB-C to 3.5. I just wish that it had the 3.5mm headphone jack from the get-go. That would have been much nicer. Nonetheless though, this is pretty standard these days, so no headphone jack. And of course the Vivo V25 Pro. For security, of course you have your standard things like your fingerprint scanner, which is an under-the-display fingerprint scanner. No, it's not an ultrasonic like you of course have on their flagship, the Vivo X80 Pro. But it is the optical one, sadly. I don't really like that one, but for the price it makes sense to have an optical version on this phone. Of course you also have Face ID and your normal other things to unlock your phone as well. And then of course we have a really cool feature. Now, at the back, it doesn't tell you much. It just looks like your normal everyday phone, and it has a really nice texture on the back itself. It feels matte of course, but overall it just seems normal, right? Well, actually they now have a feature. There's a special coating on it, and if you use a UV light above it and shine on it, it will actually leave a pattern. so you can basically draw on the phone itself. Now, of course, you have to be a little bit clever with it, and then you can just be creative, and it only stays for several minutes. But overall, I think it's actually quite fun that you can play around with your phone and create patterns on it. But I'm curious to see what others think about it. I know this is probably, again, something like the nothing phone where it's fun for a few minutes and then afterwards you don't really think about it anymore. But overall, as someone who likes to draw and likes to be creative, that's actually a nice feature for me. But again, nothing really that makes me say, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy that phone over that because of the feature. Either way, the Vivo V25 Pro, let me know what you think about it. And of course, let me know if you have any questions about the device, because then I can probably answer them in the questions below, or I can take that with me for the full review as well. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and of course, talk to you guys in the next.